Welcome to the October 12th, 2020 regular Board of Education meeting for the Evanston Township High School. Governor Pritzker recently extended the disaster declaration related to the COVID-19 pandemic for all Illinois counties and extended the ability of public bodies to hold virtual meetings to October 17th, 2020 in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. Can we have a roll call, please?
Audet.
Here.
Livingston.
Here.
Munsell.
Here.
Parsons.
Here.
Rolowitz.
Here.
Deterich.
Here.
Savage Williams.
Here. Thank you. First of all, I do want to apologize for being late. We were in our closed session and we ran a couple of minutes over. So we're going to just jump right into our agenda. Okay, the first item on the agenda is written communication. Dr. Bavis, do we have any written communication? Where is he?
See Pete.
I just realized we're missing Pete.
We're missing Pete. Right? I know, I'm thinking Dr. Bavis. All right. So we will come back to that item and I'll check. And he probably has the next item too.
No, I can do the next item.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Witherspoon. So public comments were to be submitted by 5:30 today. Dr. Witherspoon, do you know if we have any public comments?
We have not received any public comments.
Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, so let's keep going. Although we need Dr. Bavis for this item as well. Course change proposals, right? We do need him for this.
Yeah.
This is
Right. You have received it. There's one in art and one in mathematics, and both of them are explaining their title changes.
their title changes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. So nothing substantive on the new courses this year.
Okay.
His Zoom crashed, so he's coming right back.
Oh, his Zoom crashed.
His Zoom
I
crashed.
know the feeling. I'm glad it wasn't me
gremlins.
this time.
Those
Usually
gremlins, honestly, they're out there. Okay. Does anybody have any questions? The overview was pretty clear on the course proposal changes, name changes. Anybody have any questions? Otherwise, we will just continue. All right, let's keep going. Let's have an
On the
item.
next item, we do need Dr. Bavis for the next one. So, you're in touch with him, Marcus?
I am. He's rebooting as we speak. So I don't know if you want to go to the end and then come back.
Well, you know what? If you want to skip to the Finance Committee, number 11, we could do that.
Yeah, let's do
And,
that.
and Mary will be on earlier tonight.
Oh,
Of
Mary, I
course.
don't know if you know how to do this.
No, but the problem is I can't get to my ETHS files. For some reason, I can't connect remotely. I can do it. It's fine. I had 12 slides for you. Lisa, you didn't happen to grab the presentation, did you? I almost sent it directly to you, but everything that you need is really in the packet. So I'm happy to go through it. I was just thinking, oh, I have a little while. I keep trying to get into my ETHS files so that I can call up my slides and share them with you.
Okay, you know what? I have another idea.
Because I'm happy to move forward because I may not get it in an hour when you're ready to hear it.
No, I think, Mary, you just ought to move forward. Board, you have it in your packet.
Yeah.
It summarizes what the capital improvement program will recommend.
I'm happy to.
Why don't you just highlight that? That's really the substance of what we're bringing to the board.
Yeah, I am going into that item now on the board agenda since I just didn't have the slides. So I think, you know, what we talk about every year is that we work in an old building and, you know, in fact, we'll be celebrating the 100th anniversary in a couple of years. And we always seem to need more in capital spending than we can afford. Every year when we do our financial audit, the depreciation amount grows, which means your assets are getting older, and you really would want to keep up with at least putting that much back into the building. And ETHS really, with some of the debt caps and being fiscally prudent anyway, really couldn't afford to spend more than what we depreciate every year. So I like to always make sure that we highlight that with you. And just to throw out some numbers, we give you a capital plan that covers 5 years. 1 year is a recap of what we're just finishing, and then 4 years going out. And we always have more in need, clearly, than we have in funding. And so for this particular plan that you're looking at, of that 5 year, 4 in the future and 1 current, the needs, the plan is 26 million, but only about 23.2 million in funding is expected. So you can see that we have to every year continually trim off what we can trim off, put off what we can put off. And so for next summer, what the board would be approving tonight, for next summer, our main projects would be finishing up that auditorium lighting and sound project. You've kind of been hearing me talk about that for a couple years. It is a very difficult project because of the age of our auditorium and the fact that some of those things are original. And so we're in a really good place with it. We have lighting and sound experts. We've done some basic electrical upgrades that needed to be done this summer. We also have some large electrical upgrades that still need to be done. So we would be completing that next summer, in addition to adding all the wonderful lighting and sound features, some of which the board already approved. Some of the lighting a few months back, we've gotten that in. We got great prices during the quarantine because there wasn't a lot of work going on in theaters. So we are definitely underway. We need a clear space of time in order to complete that auditorium. So that would be one of the couple major projects next summer. The other one is the start of the renovation on the girls' PE locker room. And what's great about that, aside from bringing that old facility up to date on par with what we did for the boys over the last couple of years, this will be a 2-year project as well. It actually will do 2 things that I think are really important from a school-wide view. It will allow us to add an all gender, all access locker room. I had to flip back over to all your faces to make sure I didn't lose my connection. That's why I had to pause. So we're going to be allowing a bigger, better, more accommodating all gender locker room. And it will also allow some offices that exist in the back of the girls' locker room now, which are offices occupied by female PE teachers and some coaches, and some are both. But those offices are currently inaccessible by male students. And so what's great, similar to the way that we created that wonderful hallway between PE and athletics, we'll be creating a hallway that will be accessible by all students. So those 2 projects are really the main things that we would be undertaking next summer. You do have a capital plan in the handouts. You can see some of the projects that we're talking about for the future. However, the board does review those every year. So that is, always up for discussion and potentially up for change. And the only other thing I wanted to really mention in the presentation is that, our main source of funding for the capital program is debt. We're very fiscally responsible with it. And we will continue to do that. We'll do a combination of bonds, which go out and get paid back over 20 years, and then debt certificates, which the board approved last spring. That's a much shorter payback, so it helps keep the district from taking on too much long-term debt. And we were in a good situation to be able to do that and be responsible about it. So we plan to continue that process. And then our other big funding source is the ETHS Foundation. They've been contributing anywhere between 450,000 to $1 million sometimes for some of the dedicated projects. And so we're really thankful to them, and it really helps the district be able to do these major projects. They've pledged 400,000 for the auditorium project, but in addition have raised almost another $200,000 for individual components that can be added on in that system, a video presentation system in the auditorium, dedicated gifts of over $100,000 to improve that facility even more. So I just wanted to highlight our funding sources, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. I apologize for not having my slideshow ready for you, but I'm not used to being on in the 7 o'clock hour. Thanks, Pete. Any questions or anything that you feel like I may have not touched on? Gretchen, sure.
Yeah, thanks, Mary. Really good job without the slides. I don't think anybody, it's numbers after all. There's not too much you can do to make that exciting.
The slides were pretty though. I mean,
yeah. So, all of this is stuff we've seen before, obviously. So my question really has to do with what the current circumstances have done to change our thinking around capital improvements. And specifically, I'm wondering about the kinds of improvements that would be related to mitigation of issues related to COVID, like ventilation systems. And that's the first thing that comes to mind. I have zero expertise in the science, much less the structural kinds of improvements that might relate to that kind of thing. And I don't see anything like that. I do see some HVAC work. I don't know if we're undertaking that with a view towards ventilation improvements, but you've highlighted for us that the building is old. I know the air circulation isn't great. I'm sure our students and staff can vouch for that too. So I'm concerned that we are taking on projects that frankly shouldn't be a priority now and shouldn't necessarily be a priority going forward, when we may have some more basic work to do. Because even if COVID disappeared tomorrow, and apparently it's not, I think the notion that workspaces and school spaces are going to have to take into account circulating germs going forward for another version of this pandemic is something that needs to be seriously considered. I have no inside information there or expertise, but I'd like to hear a little more about that, because money's going to get tight.
Sure. I have a couple thoughts, and then Eric may have a couple of thoughts too, because these are things that we have talked about. Let me mention a couple things that I think do fit in with the types of projects that you're talking about. But before I get to those three things that I can think of off the top of my head, I will say that our operation, we're fortunate to have a team of 7 engineers, and then the head of our operations department is a former engineer, so you could kind of count him as number 8 with a plus sign. They have been probably on a daily basis looking at ventilation systems throughout the building, and also studying up and checking in with their peers and experts in the field on best practices for old buildings like ours. We're certainly not the only one, and I think schools like Lane Tech are very similar to ours. So they have already enacted some filtration changes and some air handling changes that are already addressing some of those needs. So I think that the plan is to continue that. And I will say that the operations fund itself also has a capital budget that's much smaller. It's in the couple $100,000 range. And so the board approves those things on a project basis because of the amount of contracts that fall into those types of projects. So the plan is to really try to fund that building maintenance type project list out of the building operations fund. But within the capital fund, I wanted to say a couple of things. The biggest one that I can think of is the auditorium HVAC, which we've been pushing out a little bit for the last few years. Not only would, I realize that's one part of the school, but it's also a really integral part, not only to the fine arts department, but to our rentals and to our staff meetings and student meetings and family meetings. Improving that HVAC system that is original to the space, I believe, would be not only handling the air differently, but it also would be handling some of the environmental issues that an old system like that can be causing. So we are really looking to do that for multiple reasons. The other project that I was thinking of is there's one a little bit further down the road about the ventilation in the pool. and which sounds really weird to me. The first time I heard it, I thought, what do you mean AC and that in the pool? But handling the air in that space is really important too. And like the auditorium, that space holds a lot of people without natural window type ventilation. So those are two things that are on our list, along with the operational type changes, which I feel like they've been looking at on a weekly basis just to see what can we do and what should we do. The other project that is actually on the slate for next summer, which is very dull to talk about, but is relevant to what Gretchen's bringing up, is the windows and masonry. It's a large amount. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars. We did some a couple years ago, and then we stopped because we just can't afford to do it every year. But one of the things we are fortunate to have, and I'm not a subject matter expert here either, but we have a structure or a design to our building that does have a lot of windows. But unfortunately, a lot of those windows aren't operable anymore because they're 55 some years old in the wings, not even in the oldest part of the building. So the plan would be to move around to the east side of the building like we did on the north side of the building and modernize those windows, not only with the correct, solar rating and energy rating, but to also have operational windows that can help increase the airflow within the classrooms. So Gretchen, I definitely don't have all the answers, but to your point and thinking about what you said about, is this the right time to be doing some of these things? I'm not saying that we couldn't completely change course and do other types of projects, but I mean, we certainly could do that, but I am saying that we're definitely putting all of those things into consideration as we do projects. And if we said, let's just hold off for a year and evaluate, we have to remember that there are timing and limitations on how the district can issue its debt. And so it's also not like we would be having that money sit around for certain other purposes, because when we do bond, and I'm not saying you were saying this, Gretchen, but when we do bonds or when we do debt certificates, those are for specific capital type projects. Doesn't mean it couldn't be an air handling unit or an air conditioning unit instead of a brand new outdoor track surface. But we would, if we sat back and didn't do projects, for example, for a year, we wouldn't necessarily be able to then go in and do twice as many the next year. And that money is for certain types of projects. So I just want to make sure that everybody.
No. Yeah. And just to be absolutely clear, I am not suggesting, number one, that we do projects outside the scope of capital improvement.
No.
I'm only talking, so I'm not suggesting switching the money entirely. I'm suggesting, though, that given the times we're in, we need to think very carefully. And I think all of this should be looked at with a fresh eye towards prioritizing the kinds of things that are designed to keep students and personnel safe in the building. And I appreciate your points about the auditorium and the pool, but to be honest, our kids spend far more time sitting in classrooms. So I would be concerned about what we're doing to improve that. And your point about the windows is well taken. That was part 2 of my question was, can we open windows? I remember early in the pandemic seeing pictures of students in Germany in their down coats with open windows in their classrooms. It didn't look super comfortable, but at least you could get some air circulating.
Definitely. But that's the problem. If we don't have that many nice months here, but I think we're fortunate that most of the classrooms do have windows. In fact, I think Robbie Brown has a listing of how many classrooms don't have windows, and it's a much fewer number than those that do. So we also want those windows to be operational, and not that many of them are, but a lot of them aren't. And so we want to continue to have the building have safe windows that don't leak. And the one thing I did want to say, Gretchen, I totally agree about looking at the projects. The couple of big projects are ones that, in my mind, the ones that are coming up next summer, in my mind, we're already into them, definitely on the auditorium lighting and sound. But the other one is the girls' locker room piece. And just, from an equity standpoint, I think that the boys have this great facility and the girls are still living with the 60-year-old one. So that.
Well, you're
but
not
that-
going to get any argument here. The boys
Yeah.
had the baseball field before the
I
girls
know.
got the softball field.
know.
They do a pretty good job prioritizing
Yeah.
the boys in some of these circumstances. So yeah, no, I'm not gonna,
And in the case of the locker room, the boys was much worse. The girls is nice. It's just 60 years old. So, but those are really the two big.
nice might be a
Um,
little bit of a strong term for the
All
locker
right, I'll
room.
give you
I've been
that.
in there quite a bit and not for
It's
about
better
5
than
or
the
6
boys'
years. So
Yeah. But to your point, I think I would suggest we get through these couple of projects while we're thinking of what might those other things be, depending on how this is shaking out. And Eric, I see he's turned his microphone on, so he may want to add some things.
No, I just think Mary presented it well. True, maybe students spend more time in classrooms, but they spend time in classrooms in way smaller numbers than they do in an auditorium or in a locker room or in a pool. So even the governor says no more than 50 people in a space. Well, we don't have 50 people in a classroom, but we have 1,500 people in the auditorium. We have hundreds of kids each period in the locker rooms. So frankly, my priority would be, let's take these big spaces where big groups congregate, because we really are managing those areas that are just smaller numbers of people. Actually, the windows in nearly all of our classrooms do open. And nearly every classroom in this school has outdoor windows that face the outdoors. That's one of the beauties of the design of this school that a lot of other architects have not done in other areas. So we're very fortunate on that. But I do want to reiterate what Mary said. We do have an amazing team of engineers, and they started on this last March. This is not new to us. And I mean, we have all the, and I'm sorry, I don't know the terminology, but these high quality filtering systems now in place so that they take out, all of the micro things floating in the air and the like. I am sure that we could continue and should continue improving ventilation, no question about it. But in terms of how much can we do at one time, and where do we have the greatest need, and what are our other options? And the options really are, besides having pretty decent ventilation in our rooms, we do have the option to open windows in most of our classrooms. And if we had students in a room that windows wouldn't be open and it was deemed necessary, we would have to juggle around some classroom assignments.
Pat, can I just make a comment?
Of course.
So this was actually one night that I wanted to hear the update on e-learning before I got the financial report or the capital improvements report.
Yes.
Because I am looking at this and I don't think they can be looked at or discussed in isolation.
Yes.
And so, I'm glad to hear this conversation, but I'm going to make the assumption that this has, of course, been looked at through what could possibly happen with the continuation of e-learning or our students going back to school and the need to focus on spending the money on these capital improvement projects right now, or, in the spring. And I'm not saying you do nothing, but I'm saying there are circumstances I believe should weigh into what we determine or what you determine the capital improvement projects should be for spring. Say, for instance, if none of our students come back until next fall, or if none of them, return because COVID continues throughout the school year. So it's, it's just, I'm looking at a plan that's a continuation of the 5-year plan, but I'm hoping that, was determined based on the current situation of COVID and remote learning. if that makes sense, because it's like, you know, there's some things that probably shouldn't get touched right now because we don't have students in the building, right? And then we don't know how much longer that could be. And are we planning for that, or are we just moving along with this 5-year plan that's been in rotation?
So I will tell you, and I'd be happy to compile some information for Dr. Witherspoon to, you know, distribute, whether it's with the next, you know, update on remote learning or sending it out separately to the board. But we can show you some of the information that operations has been compiling. Just a quick email that I found starting as early as July. We had companies out to pinpoint some of our I don't want to say exhaust fans because they may not be exhaust fans, but they're fans using a type of it's called pinpoint bipolarization. And so there are ways to use our air handling units which enact a filtration system on them. And so we have already, you know, we've had consultants come out. Those are about $20,000 for each major fan set within the building. So as I mentioned, those are the types of things that really fit within to the operations and maintenance fund budget. And so that's always been the plan, is to address the building needs within the operations, maintenance, and engineering budgets. We already have the systems. We just need to be able to make them appropriate for whatever the situation is that we're in. So I don't know if that's
you know what,
helpful.
Mary? No, I don't question that. I know that we have talented staff and you're doing all that. I question the spending during this time. That's all. I mean, how can we not, you know, when we're not, when our students and our staff are not in the facility right now. So I'm just looking at, you know, just what's going to happen with remote learning, and will our students be in the building? Will they be able to be in the auditorium, you know, over the next couple of years, or over the next year, or whatever the case may be? And, you know, are we carefully, which I know we are, I mean, I know we're looking at cost savings, but are we looking at money that maybe shouldn't have to be spent right now because we are not fully operating an in-person, in-school operation? That's all. So not really the projects or the filtration system or the HVAC system. I know you all are doing all that. I know that. So that's all.
So the one thing I forgot to add earlier that I did want to mention is the funding sources that are already in place for the projects that would be coming in the shorter term. The debt certificates that the board approved last year were $5 million, and $2 million of that was used for projects from last summer. So the other $3 million of that money that's already been issued is set aside for projects for this summer. And the other biggest piece is the one that I mentioned, which is foundation funding on the auditorium project, which is probably approaching about the $600,000 mark. So of the projects we're talking about for next summer, 3.6 million are already in motion by the debt that we took on last year, or in motion by way of foundation donations. So I just wanted to make sure that we understand that a decision in how we change, as you say, you know, the 4 or 5 year plan that we're always working on, it's something that probably requires a little bit of foresight to sort of turn those wheels, if you will. So I just want to throw that out there for you to consider, that a lot of that is already in motion.
That helps me.
The other thing is, board, I would never recommend diverting capital money to operations. I would just never recommend that. That's mortgaging the future. That's, instead of changing a structural deficit, let's say we had one, you know, in our regular budget, which we just presented to you, a balanced budget. And we explained to you that, you know, we had to find like $1.5 million in cuts. But we did that because people who think they're going to divert money from here over to there are literally mortgaging the future. Because it's not like all these needs in this building aren't going to go away. They are going to be there. And if you don't take care of the structural deficit, then that's only a 1-year solution anyway. I mean, you know, what are you going to do the next year? You already moved that money over there. So as a finance person, and that's really one of my backgrounds, is I would never recommend that. I would recommend.
I don't think anybody's suggesting it though, Eric.
Well, I don't know. Monique said she's troubled spending the money. So maybe I misunderstood what you meant there.
I think it's helpful to explain this, Eric.
Yeah. So if I may just explain. So I can understand, you know, let's make sure that we're spending the capital money, you know, the most wisely. Absolutely. But I would, but spending the money on capital is still the right thing to do. And that's a very small part of our budget. You know, even if we had the whole 5 million, you know, we're talking about an $80 million budget here. I mean, the fact is, we would still have to make corrections if we have a structural problem. If we have too much personnel, for example, that we can't afford, or whatever it may be. So I would recommend no question. Let's make sure that we're thinking most wisely where to put that money. But let's not. I've seen school districts that do that kind of thing, and pretty soon their buildings are falling down around them. And then there's never enough money in 1 year or 5 years or 10 years to catch up because they didn't stay up on it. So I would only ask that whatever we decide, we are willing to make the hard decisions, not what might seem the easy or short-term decision.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think it's important that you explain that, because we're not having this meeting just among ourselves. We're having this conversation, and it's going out to the community.
Right.
And our community, they don't know all of this. And all they know is that they're at home with their children, and we're spending dollars on a facility in a building where they can't access. Right. And so what we hear is, oh, the track looks great, but I can't come into the building, or, you know, things like that. So they need to understand that's who we're speaking to. And so they don't know what we know. They don't know that, you know, we're doing all this, and they don't know what it means to catch up to a facility that's aging, you know, and you never catch up. And so that is important, to just put out there, how we're coming about the money, how the money is being spent, where it's coming from, how long we've been on this. You know, we can't just stop mid-cycle. You know, we have to continue that. We're taking, making priorities as it relates to COVID. All that's important, because right now, all they're dealing.
Whoops. If you can hear us, you froze up, Monique. I don't know if you can hear us or not.
There are those gremlins again.
I thought it was me until I saw you all moving. While Monique is frozen, she might be trying to get back in. To her point, there's one more thing that I could add, and that the $3 million that was part of the debt financing. Oh, she's back.
I'm back, but no, that's all. I said enough.
Well,
You got it.
I was just adding one thing to add on to what you said, Monique, about the $3 million, which is the main funding of a lot of these projects, in addition to what I mentioned about the foundation fundraising. That $3 million, I'm not saying that anyone was proposing this, but certain funds that you get for capital projects cannot be used for operating.
Anything else, I know.
Right, so when you issue debt, which was a very modest, affordable debt amount for us to issue, you can't legally use it for operating. And in some cases, I'm not as familiar with the time requirements on debt certificates, but I certainly could look. But in some cases, you also have a limitation on how quickly you have to use that debt. Like, you're not allowed to issue it and then just keep it in your bank account. So when we talk about wheels being in motion, I think it's important to know that these projects did not take away from any funding sources for the educational component for students. And secondly, they are funds that were either fundraised for the purpose of capital or issued as debt for the purpose of capital. And I know that, you know, the locker rooms may not be absolutely necessary to do within the next 12 months. I think they're pretty bad, but other things like windows and masonry, those things are urgent. I mean, we've been dealing with a lot of leaks in the building, and I think it would be a mistake to not do the things that are really important infrastructure. I personally think the locker rooms fall under that. Auditorium, yes, it needs it. We're also so far into that, it would be difficult to back that up right now. But those are my opinions on these things are really tied to infrastructure, in my opinion.
Okay.
And I want to give a word, because I appreciate what you brought up, Monique, because as you say, you know, we're not the only ones listening in on this. And I just want to reassure people, remind them, it may not be immediate, but our students will be back. You know, this school will not remain on e-learning forevermore. And let's even say that you know, that COVID is just so threatening that it's not until next summer or fall. I'm painting a worst case scenario right now. But the fact is they will be back. And frankly, if some of these things can get done now, there's less disruption to the school. Being able to do them now, that's not our number one goal here. Our number one goal is for COVID to not be such a threat and for everybody to be able to come back. But in the interim, we can take advantage of some of this crisis. And we have had the discussion with the board before. And Mary's not exaggerating. The locker rooms really need that work. And if you were to hear directly from the people who manage the auditorium and the productions, we really do have some serious problems here. We have switches on the light board that once they go, it's so antiquated, there's no repair. Little by little, we lose lights. And we've been losing them like for 3 years. And our worry is, what happens on the day that we lose 10 or 20 or 30 at a time? And so there really are some reasons. You know, this isn't just wanna-haves. These are some need-to-haves. We really do have some issues. So again, I really appreciate you bringing it up so we can reiterate. When the students return, not only will these things either be underway or planned or done, whatever that timing is, but more importantly, they'll be there for students for decades to come.
I think it's really important to continue to have this conversation when we come together, because I think the bottom line is what you're hearing, and you know this, is that we're all really nervous about money and what's going to happen when we're on the other side and how much this is all going to cost. I think it's going to hit us at some point, and we're concerned about how we're going to be funded and if those funds are still going to be present. So a lot of our questions and these conversations are just about the unknowns, the what ifs, the future. And I really appreciate the explanation of how these projects have gotten started, and the auditorium, the foundation, and how much they've really supported and helped these projects. And I know that we have leaks all over the building. I mean, we do have a beautiful building, but it's old. And those of us who live in old homes know how expensive it is to try to keep up these homes. It is just so imperative that we try to keep them up. Otherwise, we're going to really pay on the back end. So we're not at least I'm not questioning what we're doing right now. But I am nervous about the future, and I know you are planning and looking at various scenarios, Mary. I really just deeply appreciate that, and you're so willing to answer our questions and engage in conversations. And we'll just have to keep watching what happens in our budget and how we come out of this and what's required, and how when we do come back, and Dr. Witherspoon is right, we will come back, how we come back and assure that our students and our staff are safe. And that's going to be a big discussion.
Mm-hmm. And Pat, if I could just add one thing for the board to think about for a time frame going forward, it would be early spring of 22 that we will be coming back for discussions with the board about financing for capital. And so depending on what's going on in the operational, the regular education budget, the state funding, and all those things that we talk about, the board could certainly make some decisions to slow the capital debt issuance and reserve that money for education fund if needed at that point. We're really working on money that's already been undertaken, but to give you an idea, we'll be talking about that again in about 1.5 years when we think about financing for new projects.
Great. Thank you. Are there other questions?
I just wanted to really quickly say 2 things. One, I agree completely with Monique that having this discussion is really important, because the rest of the community that isn't reading all these documents is like, where's this money going? And could my, so I think it's really valuable to make sure that the community hears it and understands. So that's one thing. But the second thing, I think this is why, we always tease Mary about her slides and coming on at 10 o'clock. But this is why that's so important, because the solid financial planning that Mary and Eric and Marcus and Pete and the administration has done, this is why it's important. We didn't know COVID was coming. We didn't know how much it was going to cost. And yet we were, I hate to say it, but we were ready for it financially. And the soundness of our planning allows us to have these bad times and weather them, and still do what Eric was saying, think about the future and keep up with capital, as well as making sure our kids are taken care of, and that Taya's getting extra to make sure she's getting more social workers and more support for her departments, so she can then support students better and all of that. So I again just want to applaud our wonderful staff for really being smart financially and thinking ahead to the unknown beyond rainy days, and being ready for them. That's what all these budget awards that we get every year, this is why it's important, because we're ready for the bad times. And we hope they're over soon, but we're ready for them. So thank you all for your hard work, always, but certainly now when it's tough.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Pat. All right, are we ready to move, I guess, backwards? Okay, let me see if I can kind of figure out where we are. Oh, here I go. Dr. Davis, do we have any written communication?
No, we don't have any written communication this evening.
Thank you. Okay, so we've done course proposals, so we're good with that.
I was stealing your job while you were gone, Pete.
Yeah, you
It was a robust course proposal of 2.
All right, you didn't have to mention it was an easy one.
Okay, let's hear the report regarding e-learning.
I'll just introduce this real quickly. So Pete and Marcus and Taya, and Taya Kinsey is with us this evening as well. Hi, Taya. Have a PowerPoint and are really going to spend some time really walking the board and folks listening in through where we are on the e-learning. We'll obviously look forward to your questions and discussion following that. And I'll probably have a few summary things to say as we kind of pull it together. But we also think it's not only important to get this information out, and you know, we couldn't have done this a month ago. Things keep evolving. You know, I mean, this is a lot we can do tonight. It's still not everything. You know, I would guess a month from now, you know, there'll even be more specifics that will become available. But I'm really glad we're going to have a rich discussion about this tonight, because also when people have questions about the latest update, we'll be able to refer them to the on-demand video of this school board meeting, so that they'll you know, really be able to hear it firsthand for themselves. So with that, our distinguished team, I'm going to turn it over. And I think, Pete, you're probably doing the intro here and getting us started.
Yeah, I'm going to do the intro, get us started. I'm going to share a screen if that's okay, so everyone can see it. Everybody see that? Is that good?
Yes.
Great. Wonderful. All right. So, you know, the first thing is we're here, we're going to provide an update, but I think it's important to go backwards as well as go forward. So just, you know, our reopening plan to remind everyone, it's based on guidance from Illinois State Board of Education, the Department of Public Health, and the Center for Disease Control. And that's all background information. We also have our guiding principles, which we've held true to this semester. And those, again, are worthy of review. Maintain a health and safety, safe environment for all students and staff. Maintain our commitment to equity. Provide meaningful, engaging academic experiences for all students. Address the social and emotional needs of all students and staff. Provide consistency and stability. And what we've come to find out, and we knew this going in, was that consistency is very important for our students. Speaks to continuity of instruction, learning, continuity of supports, and the ability to plan and execute lessons and a positive learning environment. We also committed to providing professional development for staff that enhances e-learning. We did that over the summer, but we've also continued that with a coaching model. You know, a couple of the things we mentioned over the summer, educators have been asked to transform the educational environment. That holds true today as much as it did in the summer and as much as it did in the spring. School not look or feel the same. We also want to acknowledge that every school is different. What works for one may not work for another. Flexibility is essential. We have to be nimble. And that we are also constantly monitoring local conditions. And we're going to talk about metrics later in the presentation. And those metrics, they change weekly, they change daily. And we also are being informed by some of the practices that our neighboring districts have done in terms of monitoring and opening up into the hybrid model. So we'll talk about enhanced e-learning first. So, you know, one of the things is that school happens every day through remote learning, both synchronous and asynchronous. We include high academic expectations, requirements for attendance, grading. There are live synchronous class sessions and assessments. The remote learning model at ETHS has greatly improved over the crisis learning we did in the spring. So just some consistencies of experience at this point that I'd like to elevate. Students are all using Google Classroom as our learning management system in all of their classes. Teachers are using that platform as well. Students attend school via e-learning every school day. Students attend live learning sessions Tuesday through Friday. Assignments are graded and assigned. They're assigned and graded. The students get feedback. And this provides a continuity of this instruction for our students and for our teachers who diligently plan that instruction. Again, it's a regular, predictable experience. We have a bell schedule. The use of breakout rooms in our classes has been enormously effective, and it has also provided a sense of continuity. And our integration of tech tools is consistent across classrooms. One of the things that we want to be really upfront about is that our teachers are working very hard. They're working hard to make this work. They're committed. They're spending more time lesson planning and assessment planning. They're spending time adjusting their instruction daily. Our teachers are relearning how to teach in this new environment. And that's amazing if you think about it. I talk to veteran master teachers, and they are telling me that they are relearning how to teach. And they're to be commended for that work. the work that our teachers are doing every day. But here are some of the challenges that we've identified and some of the promising practices that have emerged in response. We know that there's tech overload. And as one of the promising practices to address that, we have a Rebel Human website, which you'll hear a little bit about later in the presentation. We have mindfulness coaches, virtual calming rooms, social emotional learning check-ins, and also our Monday asynchronous schedule really helps with that technology overload. We know that there's a need to balance the synchronous and asynchronous work within a 70-minute period. Teaching bell to bell in our old 9-period-a-day schedule was something our teachers prided themselves on, using every bit of instructional time. But effectively, and sometimes you could lecture for those periods, but that doesn't hold true in the 70-minute period. It's very difficult to hold students' attention. So what do? Teachers are collaborating around that. They collaborate around their planning. They're looking at how to best chunk that. And we've seen some really positive growth and fewer 70-minute lectures because they don't work for students and really they don't really work for our faculty. Hands-on, we knew that was going to be a challenge going in. This speaks to our teachers' creativity. We've done materials distribution for labs so that students can do labs at home. CTE and fine arts, we sent kits home to provide hands-on experiences, and that distribution is ongoing. But again, that required some creativity and some thinking outside the box. Authentic assessment, we knew that assessment was going to be a challenge going in. It is a challenge. But we have teachers who are implementing new approaches, and they're sharing those at department meetings and with one another during planning time. We also know that it requires adaptive, creative instruction. That takes a lot of time. It's very challenging. But we've also noticed, our department chairs note that there's an increase in teacher collaboration with one another in planning and problem solving. Our instructional coaches are involved in this at a very deep level. And we've also built in spaces for organic discussion and check-ins to build community with our teachers. Again, another challenge is our camera off as a proxy for engagement. A lot of students turn their cameras off for a variety of reasons. But we've developed different strategies for formative assessment and to assess engagement. One of those practices is something called the democratic classroom, which assigns participants different roles in the classroom. We've also noticed that just because your camera is on is not a proxy for engagement. Your camera may be on, but you may not be paying attention. So again, that elevates the use of the chat function in Zoom or breakout rooms, little quizzes and things like that. So again, it's a real challenge. It's very difficult to present, no doubt about it, when people have their cameras off. But our teachers are also upfront. If it is an activity or a piece of the piece of the instruction that requires the camera on, our teachers by all means ask for that, and they'll follow up with students should they disengage at that point, because that's really different than having your camera on or off. That's true disengagement. There's also this abiding desire for the online environment to be the same as the full in-person model. One of the solutions we found was quite creative. We have teachers who are just putting students in breakout rooms to just be during independent work time to, again, it might seem like a little thing, but again, to encourage that, trying to make school, online school, build that sense of community. And, those breakout rooms are monitored and students are doing the work. But again, one of the things that we found is that we're looking for creative ways to build community and to do what we can. And again, this all requires ongoing coaching and support from our department chairs, our instructional coaches, our administrators. But again, this isn't a particularly long list of challenges, and these challenges change throughout the quarter and throughout the semester. But what we do is we problem solve and try to figure those out as best we can. Ty, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you were going to talk a little bit about attendance and how that's figured out and how that's working for us.
Yeah, so the ongoing conversation just about continuity of instruction directly relates to how we're building our community, our continuity of care, our engagement, students' engagement. And when we see that reflected in our attendance, we see some of what is looking the same and some of what is different. So we are in a remote environment comparing what did our first day of school look like as an average attendance rate this year compared to last year, and Then looking at snapshots in time, end of 4th week of school this year was at a 97% average attendance rate, and last year was at a 98%. So we're looking at really strong engagement, but that's not enough for us. Same on the first day of school. Last year we were at a 98%, and this year we were at a 97%, which is amazing. And we know that's not enough because we want to help students get even more engaged. So we've been doing a lot of creative work. Our teachers have been amazing at doing personalized reach outs, as have a lot of our student services team and dedicated outreach callers who've been making those personalized phone calls home, those acts of care. And we have also been doing home visits to students' homes and connecting with families. So there's a lot of ways that we are continuing to say, okay, so that's not enough. We're going to continue to work on how can we engage students, and that is seen in our attendance rate. All right, and then when we're thinking about instruction, we are really committed to all students engaging in services, instruction, the variety of supports that exist. So there's the myriad academic supports from executive functioning groups to Wild Kid Academy, being in a remote environment. Heard great things about that from this last weekend. And students with 504s, engaging with their accommodations per their 504 plans. And then when we think about students with IEPs, we all have had a lot of conversations about students with IEPs and thinking about the full continuum of services. And that really means that we're—
May I interrupt you, Taya? Everybody on the call, we probably want to mute ourselves if we're not the speaker. I think it'll just help with the sound going through. Thank you.
So when we think about the full continuum of services for all needs, that really means students with IEPs and all students. And when we're specifically thinking about students with IEPs, we're talking about students with one class in special education, ranging from many classes in special education to students with more significant needs, including the transition house and including the day school. And students are really working toward IEP goals, engaging in instructional services as well as the related services. So you can see some examples here, but that includes everything from occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech language, social work, etc. There's so many ways, and I have to say our case managers are doing tremendous work. Our teachers and our paras, that means they're doing the work in the classrooms, but they're also doing work in small groups, doing one-on-one, and it just really continues to promote the full continuum of services. I'm going to go to our next page. Here, we're going to talk a little bit about our school-wide efforts around well-being and social-emotional learning. One of the things that you've heard us say a lot is that social-emotional learning and well-being is not a student services thing, because we all own it. And that, I think, has been something that we've embraced as a school for some time now. And you have really seen this take hold now more than ever in the classroom setting, and how we're all engaging and reaching out to students and building community. And so when we think about those pieces, we really see we're continuing to do much of the same: social work referrals, crisis intervention, individual and group work, and our students continue to practice things like acknowledge, care, tell, to reach out when they're worried about other students, to show that we are Evan Strong, that being Evan Strong doesn't mean that you're stronger by yourself. It means we're stronger together. Our families reach out when they're worried about someone. We have had a variety of experiences where students and families and staff have intervened because they're concerned and they're reaching out. And so that's something that we are continuing to build on, just as we have in the years past. Our Wildcat Futures series is moving ahead in terms of thinking through all of the career options and career pathways that are being designated. And as we've been identifying specifically our Wildcat Future series, we actually have one coming up, a family event coming up this Wednesday, October 14th. We've had many virtual remote events that have gone really well. That includes 350 folks showing up remotely for our senior post-high school planning event in the evening. So there's lots of ways that we're seeing positive engagement. And again, differently than we've done in the past, but really seeing that positive engagement. On our family talk series, we've already engaged in executive functioning. We have had our beginning of the school year was reflected in, beginning in the fact that we had focused on how are we looking at COVID and how are we looking at mental health. So that's something we're continuing to build on. And actually, October 22nd, we have at 6:30, Dr. Singer is going to talk about preventing youth suicide. Another positive.
Taya, are you moving papers around? Could they be sliding over your microphone?
They could be sliding over my microphone. My apologies. Thank you.
Well, I think you're the only microphone on, and we're getting a lot of interference.
Thank you for that. Sorry about that.
Okay, let's give that a try. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. So one of the things we wanted to highlight was McKinney-Vento needs assessments are really another area that we are making sure that all of our homeless families we have removed all the barriers we can to help them continue to engage safely in learning and to be covered. Our mindfulness coaches are supporting how to embed mindfulness within the classroom setting. And then, of course, we have our new ETHS virtual calming room that Pete talked about a little bit. And we also have our partnership with Rebel Human. Another positive is the Dean's communication. And so the Deans have started their own positive communication out with each of their class of, and that's been well warranted. How is that on our feedback with our papers? Are we doing okay? So looking forward to materials distribution. We were really excited that 6,000 bags were provided to students for supplies for the school year. And we've continued to do that. We're going to continue to do that Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. But it's really great that we've actually used this as an intervention. It isn't that easy for many families to simply come up to the building, pick up the additional supplies that were necessary. And so we've actually done 2,000 additional bags for pickup and delivery. And we've used that again as an intervention. Just on Monday, we identified some additional supplies that a student needed, and we quickly made a plan around how can we get that to the student.
You know what? It's Gretchen. I am so sorry, Taya. I just have to interrupt. I know we've interrupted you already, but I am just completely distracted. There is some horrible rustling going on, and there's a dinging that is just constantly interrupting you. And I'm so sorry, but I really think it's taking away from your whole presentation.
I don't know what that is. Everybody looks like they're muted.
I know, and I can see that, but it's horrible.
I think
if you're using an Apple product, you can get notifications on your own computer if you're using it, and then if you have them on while you're speaking, if they're coming through, it'll feed through what you're saying, and we'll hear it.
It's
so
iMessage.
There's a way to turn like your iMessage notifications off, or to put on Do Not Disturb on your computer.
I'm definitely going to look at that because that wasn't being notifying to me, but since I was the only one who wasn't muted, I'm guessing that's where it was coming from. So I'm going to do that. I'll wrap us up quickly and I'll make sure to do that. So I apologize for the distraction. Thank you. So one of the things we wanted to briefly just say was the reopening plan. We're really focused on continuing to look at how we're communicating with everyone. And as we're thinking about communications, we just from July 1 have sent about 100 new emails, and that really focuses on supports, resources, well-being, events, school-wide topics. So we're really looking at those variety of things. As you all know, because you, I'm sure, have tuned in, eTown Live is a commitment that Dr. Witherspoon and Dr. Campbell have continued to demonstrate, looking at that every other Friday. And then our virtual events are an area that we are continuing to look at. That is from the Family Talk series, our Wild Kit Future series, and looking at our daily bulletin. So there's a variety of ways that we're looking at that. And that was my final notification, because I'm going to move ahead to Dr. Campbell. And I could hear that one, so I'm going to make sure that that gets muted. Thank you.
Thank you, Taya. I mean, we're trying to do this presentation and we have our notes, so we have the presentation here and the notes that are here. So I'm doing the same thing, but I'll make note of what was a challenge there, Taya. And so to continue on, I dare not say we're trying to make things as normal as they can be, but we're certainly wanting to provide certain touch points for our students and staff to let them know that we're going to try to continue to do the things that make us the great wild kits that we are. And so we have distributed kit care packages for our open house night, or for our open house, which would normally be Parent Shadow Day, open house. We had our teachers send virtual introductions to families. We've also held fall conferences remotely, and we were just nervous, very, very nervous about the tech for fall conferences, getting the right links and all of the logistics, the technical logistics behind going through and building up and creating the infrastructure for fall conferences. And they went seamlessly. There were some concerns with sign up, because we had to extend our time to 10 minutes just to allow for technical issues and challenges and making sure that people got the right links. That was a challenge, but we powered through that. Our teachers were just phenomenal at scheduling time with families and sending emails to make sure that families were getting the appropriate feedback that they needed if they didn't get a conference. And actually, I didn't hear a single complaint about conferences on the back end. I actually heard a lot of accolades for conferences, and that parents were happy that they didn't have to find parking and they didn't have to rush from work. So there are a lot of things. And so we're happy with that, but we know that there are continuing challenges ahead with figuring out like how to make sure that we have appropriate representation at our conferences. We also held Student of the Month this morning. 7:30 a.m. We were bright and early right here. Well, I was bright and early right here, but we had so many families and students and staff on with us at 7:30 this morning. We had close to 100 people show up for Student of the Month this morning. And it was such an inspiration to start the week with, to hear how our students are showing up, to hear how they are inspiring each other, they're inspiring their colleagues, they're inspiring teachers, they're inspiring all of us. And just to hear those 40 or so students and what great of a job they were doing. The teachers were, some parents were just, in awe and in tears, and the teachers were just inspired. A few parents who wouldn't have normally made it on campus or on site. They were Zooming from work. One parent was Zooming from the hospital where she works, and just saying, thank you. This was such a good thing to do for her student. It was a great way to start the week. And we had some conversation in my office. Should we do Student of the Month? Can we do Student of the Month? I was committed to doing Student of the Month, and it was a very, very difficult thing to sort of pull together virtually, but we did it, and it was worth it. We continue to supply meals for the week. And I think on Friday, Dr. Witherspoon and I got a message that the USDA has just extended the summer meals program through June of 2021. That simply means that we'll be reimbursed for our meals. So there are, we'll get reimbursed. So there are free meals for families. And so no one should go hungry during this pandemic. If you need a meal, ETHS can provide meals on Mondays, and you can come back each Monday to get what you need, and we'll get reimbursed for that from the USDA. That's a good thing that's come from the federal government. We're continuing to provide our student photos and yearbook photos that are happening out front on the lake in Dodge. We held our National Honor Society ceremony last week, which just got a lot of great feedback on that. We're hosting Spirit Week. Today started Spirit Week, and I was out doing a lot of principal stuff today. I was on the activity bus with the mask, with Willie the Wild Kid, following our drum line through downtown Evanston. Because if we can't congregate here, we're just taking the Wild Kid pride out in the Evanston community. And we continue to promote staff and student well-being through the Rebel Human videos, and really just offering the right kind of professional development to process and to help us to negotiate ourselves and maintain our humanity and see the humanity in others as we move forward with this in our remote setting. We've also done 175 hotspots, Wi-Fi spots deployed for staff and students, 900 freshman Chromebooks. You got to go back, Pete. 900 freshman Chromebooks were deployed. Every student has a Chromebook in our one-to-one program. Every staff member has also been issued, thank you, have also been issued a mobile device. And believe it or not, we have repaired over 250 Chromebooks that have been supported, and we have increased our Chromebook loaner program to over 200, meaning if something's wrong with your Chromebook, bring it here, we'll give you a loaner so that you can keep up with remote learning. In the spring, we were surveying students every day. Next slide, Pete. In the spring, we were surveying students every day and just getting a pulse, but we found that we were doing that through attendance and some other things, but we found that it wasn't as useful as we needed it to be. And so we're engaging attendance and taking attendance differently. But this summer, we also surveyed students, guardians, and staff. And this fall, we will also be doing the same. And so in a week or so, ETHS will be sending a survey to students, to guardians, and to staff just to assess how we have done the first quarter and if we can make any adjustments so that we can tweak and make adjustments for the second quarter. And at the next subsequent board meetings, we'll be sharing that data with the community. And we'll also be sharing how we did with grades and how our student did with grades for the quarter. Pete, I think you're back up again.
All right. All right. So that brings us to metrics. We've been monitoring a variety of metrics. One of the key metrics, is that, and it goes to the Harvard Global Health Institute, is the test positivity rate of 3%. And we want to apply that. We'll look at that in region 10, which is our region. We also look at the test positivity rolling 7-day average cases per 100,000, increased cases rolling 7-day average, and increased youth cases rolling 7-day average. And we've also been monitoring the metrics from our neighboring districts to see how they're faring and what they're doing and how those are informing their decisions. Again, with a look toward continuity of instruction, but also with the recognition that, there is no real one metric. There's no consensus on what that one metric should be. This slide comes from Johns Hopkins. And I thought this really kind of summarized the situation that districts are in. Teachers wanted to gauge their personal risk in the classroom. Absolutely true. School system leaders want a metric to inform their decisions on instructional models, full remote, hybrid, full in person. Parents want it to know if it's safe to send their kids to school, but there's no consensus in what it should be. In fact, they say that there's a paucity of evidence and great variation in the COVID-19 statistics, as well as the diversity and social economic needs in the community, making formulating a specific threshold a fraught challenge for public health professionals. It doesn't stop us, though, from looking at those metrics and from looking at that 3% as a marker. But this isn't evolving. We were reminded just on Friday how evolving this situation is. There's preliminary results of a Northwestern University study. They looked at blood tests and they concluded that 20% of Chicagoans, 1 in 5, carry COVID-19 antibodies. Now, what does that mean? Well, here's an excerpt from that article in the Trib. They said that the 20% rate was consistent in every zip code in the city. That would include the Rogers Park zip codes, as well as tests being done at Northwestern Medical School workers. And the key takeaway is what we think this means is that there's a lot more exposure to this than people are aware of. That was the number one. That was the first takeaway. And equally important, though, for us is what researchers don't know is whether the people who are carrying those antibodies had enough of the positive virus to pass it on to other people. That's extraordinarily important if you think about it. And that's just one example of how this is really the pandemic and COVID itself is just an emerging field that's being studied. And finally, ProPublica reported last week that Illinois has had COVID-19 outbreaks in 44 schools, but they won't say where they've occurred. So we know there's been 44 of these outbreaks. And for obvious reasons, they want to protect student identity and different things. They don't want to announce where those schools are. But to that end, we are monitoring our neighboring districts who are now in the hybrid model to see what challenges they're facing. We do know that there were some challenges in the Glenbrooks where they were hybrid for a few days, and then they had to shut down for cleaning because they had some COVID positive cases. We're looking at New Trier to see how they do with their hybrid. And remember, their hybrids in both of those instances are about a quarter of the students at a time, which is similar to what we have proposed. And Marcus, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Pete. I just want to revisit what you just said, and that is that we know that some of our neighboring districts, and there's some other districts in Illinois who started a hybrid 1 week ago today, and they are not open a week later. Some started their hybrid plans less than a week ago today, and they are not open today. We know that hybrid model is disruptive. Pete, you go back to the other slide for me. Thank you. The hybrid model is more instructionally disruptive, and there are definitely significant challenges to remote learning, but it is the best option for the continuity of instruction. And my peers are bearing this out in our neighboring districts and some other districts around Illinois. And there are a lot of struggles and challenges. And people think, well, we should just open schools so that the kids can be together. It is not the goal of a hybrid model. The goal is to keep kids apart, not to allow them to be together. They're not going to be together in classrooms. We will not allow them to congregate in the hallways. They can't congregate and be together in the cafeterias, if they even get a chance to eat lunch in the cafeteria, because many of them would be eating cafeteria in a gym. And so this is not definitely not an ideal situation, and definitely not the school that we think it could be given the restrictions of social distancing and all of the ISB requirements. And so the risk, and we set this early late in the summer, middle in the summer, and then late in the summer before we started school at our town hall. And ETHS maintains that the risk and restrictions for hybrid do not benefit learning at this time. And I just can't imagine how disruptive it is to allow certain students to come for just a couple of days, and then we have to shut down again, then open, then shut down again, then open and shut down again. And one of the things that I'm also finding from a few of my colleagues up this way is that, teachers have accommodations, some have accommodations to be home, so they're not teaching from the classroom, they're teaching from home. And some kids, they want to see their teachers. And when they get to school and they find out that their teachers aren't present, they don't want to be at school, they would rather stay home. And other teachers who come to school to teach, they have to teach in a mask. So if they're only a quarter of the students who are in the building and a teacher's using a mask to teach, if I'm a student on remote, how am I going to understand what my teacher's saying? And if I'm in a world languages class, that makes it even more complicated and complex. So I know that there's a desire. My energy level is not what it usually is. And it's not just because we're remote and we're having to do this run twice as hard just to be where we normally would be, but a lot of us are energized by each other and we're energized by the kids. So we want the kids to be here. We want the staff to be here. It's just not safe at the moment. And that's all we have for this presentation. I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Witherspoon if he has any closing remarks. You're muted, Eric.
I guess I double clicked. I went off mute and back on mute. Now I'm here. I just want to thank Marcus, Pete, Taya. Thank you very much. And I really appreciate you showing all of the things that we have been looking carefully at. all the components, everything that goes into this delivery model. And just the fact that we're really striving to give our students that full real school experience, but in a virtual environment. And we know that there are trade-offs. We know it's definitely not identical. But I will say that our students have really been joining. I mean, you know, they're getting community service activities going. They're attending clubs and activities. They're attending their classes. They're working in groups. And so it's really been, I think, really a credit to our students that they're responding so well to their teachers, given a situation that is not what teenagers seek to have, to say the least. I do want to go back to a couple of things. First of all, Pete mentioned that one metric we have been given by the Harvard Global Health Institute is that we really would need a 3% or lower positivity rate in order to have some sense of safety. Obviously, it's not a guarantee, but clearly that's what they're saying. It would say that, you know, the infection rate is at least something that seems we can manage it. I did want to point out we are in Region 10. The governor actually assigned statewide regions because the public health officials determined that it's not about what's happening in just one community or one neighborhood. It's what's happening in that region that gives a measure of the danger, the safety, what people are dealing with. So we're in Region 10. And when you think about that 3% positivity rate, I think it's important to know that we have had now 5 days of positivity increases in Region 10. Our 7-day rolling average at the moment is 5.5%. So we're well above it. And actually, and the last date that they've published, this was as of earlier today, you can actually go to the website and check out Region 10. But as the last date they posted was the 9th of October. So what they did is they posted a whole week. And on that Friday the 9th, it was 5.7% positivity rate. Not only is not only has the positivity rate increased for 5 consecutive days as of that last report, but there have been 6 days in Region 10 of increased hospital admissions as well. So Region 10, and I understand that just today, the state put Cook County, I think it's called on the warning list, but again, so we're doing very well in Evanston, very, very well. The problem is we don't live in isolation. And the minute we would try to bring back people, remember, we have 600 employees. And they live not only all over Region 10, they even live in Indiana and in Wisconsin and some other areas. But even if we were to bring back, today at least, 25% of our students, you know, that's about 900 students. That would be somewhere between 900 to 1,000. But with 600 employees, you know, we're looking at 1,400 people in the building at one time. And the students on the hybrid model would be able to attend school 2 days every other week. So in 4 weeks, any one student would attend school 4 days. But the employees would have to be here every day. So as hundreds and ultimately thousands of people cycled in and out of the building every single day, the employees would be exposed to those thousands of people coming in to the building because, you know, come in for 2 days, you switch out, but now, you know, the next 900 to 1,000 come in for 2 days. And then the next week, you're not out in, but the next 900 to 1,000. And that's just how it has to work. And you might ask, why 25%? Well, when we explained the hybrid model earlier, actually in the summer, we cannot do the 6 feet of social distancing in the classrooms, in the hallways, in the spaces where we would be serving lunch with more than that 25% in the school. Just picture, you have to have 6 feet of separation on all sides of you, all sides. So whether you're walking down the hallway, you're sitting in the classroom, you're sitting, as that photo showed, having your lunch, 6 feet on every side in order to meet the requirements. And I'm just going by the ISB requirements, they've not been lifted. And in fact, if you're in that class with a handful of other students, while everybody else, mathematically about 75% are remote, and Marcus described the teacher trying to teach, virtually wearing a mask, 75% of the students on a screen. The students in the classroom, according to the ISB requirements, are not allowed to turn around. They must face forward at all times. And they must have a system to enter and leave the classroom so that they enter and leave the classroom at 6 feet apart, and they have to be in assigned seats at all times. And in a passing period, you would be assigned a pattern you must follow every day without exception. Because part of this is for contact tracing, but another is to maintain that 6 foot distance to wherever you're going next, to again enter and go to the same assigned seat each time for those 4 days a month that you're here. That has to be one of the most disruptive models. And by the way, or you say, well, we just made a model that is too confusing and too difficult. No, that's everybody's model. At one of the neighboring high schools where they were open 3 or 4 days and then they had to shut down for 4 days. And they are hoping to open again tomorrow. I don't know what their status is for tomorrow. They weren't even bringing in 25% of their students. They were bringing in 12.5%. They were bringing in only 1/8 of their students in the morning, 1/8 in the afternoon, and even at 1/8, they lasted about 4 days. So this is serious business. So what I want to reiterate is, I've been saying now since the beginning of the school year that we can anticipate that we're going to be on e-learning for this first semester. We're wrapping up the first quarter now. So we're already close to it, halfway through the semester. And I anticipate, unless something dramatically positive happens with COVID, and all of a sudden, COVID is not a risk, as we're seeing today, I anticipate that we will, and I think we should all have this mindset, and I'm asking students in the community to have the mindset, that we will be on remote through the semester, so that would mean through the second quarter. But we'll use these metrics to make a determination about what we may or may not be able to do then at the start of second semester, which would start right after the winter holidays. Our goal is to be able to give people a 30-day heads up or notice, so that they would be able to plan accordingly if we're going to go. And again, unless COVID disappears, it would not be a full in-person model like we're used to. It would be the hybrid that Marcus and I have just described. But we have these metrics to follow. We will be following them closely. But I will end my comment with one more thing. And that is that the research has shown that the younger students, 12 and under, do not seem to be as infectious as adolescents and teenagers who are ages 13 and over. And in fact, their terminologies that's been used in some of the latest research is that adolescents, teenagers, are super spreaders. And we really have to think about that, because Evanston is doing really beautifully right now. But that's also because we don't have all these kids coming in and then going out into the community. I wonder what would happen to Evanston doing beautifully if we all of a sudden started to have some outbreaks and started sending super spreaders out into the community. And frankly, we don't know that answer. So what we have to do is try to deal the best we can with what we know. As you know, information about that they're discovering about this disease continues to evolve. But what we don't want to do is get it wrong in terms of dealing with a deadly virus. Because if even one person were to contract it or spread it in this school, and it resulted in the death of even one person, and I know this sounds really hysterical and fearful, but people are dying of this. And if even one death resulted from that, it would be one of the most horrific things to ever come out of this high school. So we are looking at this from a safety angle. We are going to follow the metrics that have been recommended. And we are going to do our very best when we do go to the hybrid to enforce all of those safety matters. And by the way, the other thing students will have to know is they will have to wear their masks, and adults as well, 100% of the time when they're in the building, except when they're eating. 100% of the time. You don't get to drop it down on your chin when you're in class. You don't get to drop it under your nose when you're walking down the hallways. Students and adults would have to be required to wear their mask properly 100% of the time, except when they are in a socially distanced setting and having their lunch. So that's where we are. And we don't know anything more than anybody else knows. We're just trying to deal with what we understand in the best way we can to keep these kids safe, to keep the adults in this school safe, and to keep the community safe. And that's our update.
Thank you. Thank you, all of you. I am humbled by the amount of work you're doing, the thought you've put behind this, and just what I know about what it takes to try to run a school in a hybrid model. It's really a lot. I'm also really impressed that you are continuing to run the school, you know, parent conferences and Spirit Week and all of the activities that we do, you're still doing, or at least you're trying to do them in this remote setting. But I also know to plan all of those things requires an extraordinary amount of work. And sometimes you anticipate all the layers of things that could go wrong, things that you might have forgotten. You work collaboratively with your peers, and other folks remind you, but then you still might miss something important because there are just so many things that we can't anticipate. So I'm just really just thinking a lot about what you just said in this very thorough report. I just have a few questions, but first I'll open it up to the other board members. Does anybody have any questions you'd like, or anything you'd like the staff to elaborate on?
Pat, I don't have a question, but I just want to really take the time out to commend all of you. And those who are not here, those who are watching that are part of this amazing team. And I'm wearing my parents' hat, my parent hat right now. And the level of engagement, in my estimation, is even higher in terms of teachers reaching out to students and parents. It's at a level that actually almost that I've never seen. And I know the situation requires for a different kind of effort in terms of outreach to families and students. But I can say as a parent, I just don't see how you all could be doing a better job with that. The fidelity in which this is playing out, you know, it's really remarkable what you all, the level of coordination that it must take, and everyone keeping the fidelity of what the plan is, from folks reaching out about delivering books to teachers reaching out when there are missed assignments. I think it's just important as a parent to really, I'm living, our family is living this experience through the lens of parents and students. Had to lift that up. And then just the other thing of just another, the traditions, as Pat just said, that all of the work that it must take to keep these activities and traditions, from National Honor Society to all the support programs, but really the traditions, that although we're living in an era where there's so many unknowns and so many anxiety about what's to come, but social, emotionally, it really provides an anchor for the students, provides some sense of normalcy, whatever that is in this time. So just wanted to lift that up and elevate that as a parent, that you all, my hat off to you. I know it cannot be easy, having worked in schools all these years, and a school the size of a small city. So thank you for all that you all are doing.
I'd also like to, as a parent, echo Jude's amazing words and feelings about that, because I have a daughter who's a senior and I'm working from home, and I am, just on the other side of the wall, hearing her, for a few hours every day, interacting with, her peers and with her teachers. And I'm hearing, Mr. Daoudi in the French department playing music for the kids online, and I hear the voice of her AP, lit teacher welcoming them all back, and I see how they're going into their breakout rooms and spending time with each other, and kids that she didn't know coming into the class, how she's getting to know them through those daily interactions, and it is extraordinary. It's extraordinary because it really seems to me like watching all hands on deck. Everybody has come together through this very unified, very determined effort that we're going to make this work and we're going to make this good. And it's inspiring. It's really inspiring. And as Pat said, it's humbling, and I'm very proud and pleased by how well, I know how hard it is. It's extremely difficult to pull this off. But I think that with the attitude that, this is a learning process and we're learning how to make this better as we go, and we just keep improving and with the idea that, we may be doing this for a while, and there are opportunities here that I think people are looking for, the ways to engage students. Maybe they couldn't engage certain students before that they're able to engage now. And maybe, you know, there are other ways of interacting that we didn't really expect. So I think there are some positive outcomes from all of this, but it's the teachers are incredible, and you all in the administration are fantastic. And I was so impressed, even just going to pick up books and the way that was, you know, well, it was incredible. You know, it was such the drive-through book pickup and how well organized that was. And so all of these little efforts coming together to make one grand, wonderful experience, I think is amazing. So thank you.
I'll echo what Stephanie said. And then there's what happens on the backside. I got the pleasure to walk through the building a week and a half ago. I had to do a recording for the National Honor Society, and to see the activity of staff trying to prepare. I have no idea what they were doing, but Marcus, when you said run twice as hard, that's what I saw in a building, you know, where students were not in, but I saw adults working and pulling things together. And, you know, there's like this assembly line reminding me of my days at Ford Motor Company, where I just saw people just working and working and working. And also, you know, I want to speak to those that are not teachers, you know, but that are helping the process along as well. And I saw how tired they looked, but how, you know, how important this work was. And, you know, so, because they don't often get lifted, right? You don't remember those that are in the background. And when I saw them, my heart just went out to them, because they were working so hard. And I know that parents are struggling. I mean, this breaks my heart. This is why I'm so passionate about the community and the parents, because I know that there are parents that have quit their jobs, literally, to help support online. They don't have the luxury to work from home. But I'm so happy that we have a district that wraps around the students that we support. And so I really want to say to the parents, if you need help, if you are struggling, if your child needs help, they're not connecting, or whatever the case may be, please reach out. You know, I don't have all the answers. School board members don't have all the answers, but we have the connections to get you to where you need to be. And so, you know, I don't know how this will settle with some, especially in the Black community. So I encourage you to reach out and get that support, because it's there. So, you know, it's just amazing to watch you all still hustle and run twice as fast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I just want to echo what everyone has said, which is we are so lucky to have the amazing administrators and teachers and staff that we do. It's unbelievable. Every time I think about the fact that you prepared almost 4,000 individually specific bags for kids, and then you delivered them, and you had another one the next week for another class or a special project. I mean, it blows. I can't even understand how that happens. So, and that's one thing you're doing. You're doing a billion more things. So we are just so grateful for your work and the heart you put into this. And as Monique said, everybody, not just the people we get to see every month, and not just the teachers who are all of those people are fabulous, but everybody, because this really is a group thing. I did want to lift something up that Eric said, and that I think is really important. You know, none of us on this Zoom or anywhere want this to be the way that school is. None of us want that. That is for sure. And as Marcus said, it's exciting to have the teachers and the kids in the building. I mean, even in our little world where we get presentations from the students coming and do the horseshoe and get the pin from Pat, We love that. It's exciting. It's part of why we're here, because we love the kids and we want them to be engaged and a part of their community. But I think that what Eric said about putting continuity and quality of education at the forefront is really important, because yes, the health and safety is a huge factor and we have to think about that. But if we were to move to a hybrid model, one of the things I've heard from a lot of teachers is what you were saying, wearing a mask with 25% of the kids in front of you and all these other people on Zoom. I mean, look at tonight, we've had hiccups with our Zoom just in this little meeting and there's only a few of us. When you're doing it with students and you're trying to engage students who are online and students who are in the classroom, not to say that we won't at some point do that if that makes sense, but I think we need to look at the holistic picture. And our goal is to make sure our kids are engaged and are learning and are supported. And I, again, applaud our folks for doing such an amazing job at keeping all those things happening in a remote environment. And it's not easy, but I do worry about when we go to hybrid, if, you know, whenever that happens, there are things that are harder. And, you know, I know ETHS, we'll figure them out, but let's not lose sight of the fact that school won't be regular old ETHS that we all know and love right away. And there are trade-offs and there are challenges. And if we are putting, you know, equity and the continuity of these kids' education and their health, of course, that matters. So I think that's really important, because I just don't know that, I mean, all the things that Stephanie and Jude said as parents really speak to going the extra mile and doing the most to make sure our kids are learning and are being successful. And we don't get a lot of time with these kids. Stephanie's daughter is going to graduate in a few months, right? So, and lots of other kids. So we want to give them everything we can now. And I just worry that we need to really, not that I worry, I guess I think you all are doing a good job of balancing everything to make sure that those things stay front and center and that we keep doing the very best we can given all these constraints. So again, it's just really to say thank you. You guys are awesome. And you please extend our grateful thanks to everybody that's associated with you and all the work that's happening. It's amazing.
So I just, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Gretchen.
Sorry, I didn't know if somebody else was going to jump in there. Ditto, I'm going to just keep it at that. I am appreciative and thankful. And I also want to say that I agree with the focus on the safety of our students and our staff. And I think that we all need to be patient as we move through this. And I think our community has been patient. I mean, occasionally frustration bubbles up, but I think generally speaking, our community has been patient, has worked with us and been able to deal with the frustrations, recognizing that so many people are dealing with similar or even worse frustrations. What I would like to say is much more mundane than thanks for all the great work. And that is, I really appreciated the presentation tonight. I appreciated that it had some structure and it focused on the stuff that matters from the perspective of the school board. And I want to sort of I think we all know, our administrators and school board members sitting around the table understand our roles. And the role of the school board is not to get tangled up in the operations of the school. I know our administrators know that, and I think that our school board members do too. You know, our work is meant to be very different. We are here to work with the administration to develop policy, to make certain that we hold ourselves and the district accountable for the implementation of that policy, to set goals and to make sure that we're keeping on top of progress towards achieving those goals. So what I would like to say is, COVID has just thrown a giant monkey wrench in that whole structure. And we have a really, really well thought out structure in place of goals and metrics and so forth. We need, I think, as we move forward in this era, to overlay our goals or overlay this COVID reporting structure on our goals one way or the other. We need to mesh those two so that we don't lose sight of, the end game for our students. And I think we can get so caught up in surviving the moment. And I agree that it's important, because if we don't survive the moment, we're not going to get to the finish line. But we can't, in our excitement over our ability to make it through a Zoom meeting successfully, we can't forget the ideas that our students are supposed to take something away from the Zoom meeting, and it's supposed to take them to the next step of their life, which is college or a job or a training program with that same kind of preparation and enthusiasm that they would have had even without COVID. So I think it's really important for our board to understand its role in this, and to rely on our administrators to tie this stuff together, connect us back to our goals so that we don't lose sight of them. And we, build this into a regular reporting structure so that it becomes easier and doesn't feel like you just have to create some massive report to dump on us every time we meet and come together. And I defer to you I defer to all of us. I mean, I think we all need to think creatively about how we can communicate. And the other piece of that is, of course, what I think several people have already mentioned, which is keeping the community informed. And I think there's no such thing as too much transparency in this kind of environment. And I've heard it emphasized by our attorneys in their weekly webinars. Frantic Rattlet is doing this amazing webinar series. If you haven't watched any of them, they're all available on demand. And they've emphasized that point too, this transparency piece. I think it's in everybody's interest to over communicate. And it's hard to do because we're so busy doing the actual job. So the communications piece always comes after the stuff that you're trying to get done, but before you have to communicate about it. Anyway, those are my points. But the overarching point is this: let's connect it to our goals. Let's not lose sight of it, and let's figure out how to communicate it. Also, I don't mean to put our student rep on the spot, given that it's her birthday and everything, but I would really love to hear from Carmaya about her experience and how this is going. And we probably should have started there.
Yeah, just real quick, it's Carmia. You're totally fine. I just wanted to straighten that out.
Thank you, because I'm horrible at that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, my experience, it's been pretty okay. I'm really impressed with the staff and how supportive everything is. It's just not the way students usually learn, so it's just going to be difficult, and there's no way to really get around that except to just kind of give the most amount of support that you can. So homework has definitely been something that is hard for me. Procrastination and motivation is something that I'm struggling with. Yeah, am I doing my complete report right now, or just giving a little bit of how I'm feeling? Because I don't want to go over what I...
You're not doing your report just yet.
Okay,
so.
Yeah, but I'm doing pretty okay. I'm struggling with just some homework and just time management, learning how to do everything that I'm doing at home. But yeah.
And Carmia, feel free as we make comments and talk through the meeting. If you have something you'd like to add, you are a part of this meeting as well. So you are welcome to add any responses that you'd like to at any time, not just during your report.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. So I'd like to end by just saying just a deep appreciation and a thank you on behalf of the board. And it just seems like such a small thing to say, but I am recognizing the amount of work that every single person at ETHS, from the top administrator to every single role here, you're all working, everybody is working really hard to make this a meaningful year for students, this really odd year. It's just unprecedented, bizarre in so many ways, both locally and nationally, right? So it's just probably one that will impact us, all of us. And we want to make sure that our students have the best educational experience that they can coming out of this. But we also know that a part of that experience will be COVID. A part of that experience will be how they dealt during this time, and the struggles they personally experienced. So once again, it's all morphed together. So I do appreciate the work, and I know how exhausting it is for every single person here. And I just want to make sure that I say out loud that it is important for students to take care of themselves. Student well-being and faculty and staff well-being as well is so important. Please take care of yourselves, take care of your families, do what you need to do to take care of yourselves, because I do want folks to come out of this and give each other grace, because mistakes are going to be made by everybody. I've made mistakes. We're all going to make. Some of the mistakes might appear small and some of them might appear pretty massive, but please recognize we are not doing things the way we normally would. Everything we do really is best practices because we don't have a playbook for this. So everything we do is great. So, and just remember that it is important to come through, come out on the other end, identify what we've learned, and come out healthy and strong as possible. So really, thank you. Thank you for the report. And I'm sure you'll keep us updated. I'll want to hear some kind of report every month so that we can just kind of keep track of how things are going and what new information. And it seems like there's always new information for us to look at and try to understand and apply.
Can I just butt in sort of, I know we're sort of trying to close up this section of the meeting, but I really feel though, sort of maybe echoing Gretchen's point about communication. And I do sense that there is, obviously we have to be flexible. We have to be, sort of roll with uncertainty. On the other hand, I do sense people, just after listening to sort of, I think it's pretty evident in the way we're thinking about hybrid that it's not ideal. And in fact, I think it sounds from what I'm hearing and seeing in the presentation that hybrid has actually got a lot of drawbacks compared to the possibilities of just pushing forward through creating really excellent online or remote learning. And I know there are a lot of challenges with remote learning, and we're reshaping and reinventing a lot of things with that. But I'm wondering if there's any benefit for the community or for sort of planning and communication for us to sort of come up with, or at least tell the community, you know, if we get to a certain percentage in the population where hybrid would be a possibility, what would that percentage be? What would it look like? I just want, or just to say, look, hybrid's not really what we want to do. You know, it's sort of like we just want to do on, and I'm welcoming everybody's feedback and pushback on this, but I'm just getting the sense that it's like, to me, it's sort of like do online and protect everybody from the, you know, incidental case of COVID and, you know, an outbreak or whatever could possibly happen, even in a hybrid situation. Just do online, or wait until wait until we really know it's safe and the risk is really, really, really low to be able to go back into a more than hybrid kind of situation. Because to me, it just seems like such a pivot to go from online to hybrid, and everything has to be, and then you're putting all your energy into that and to keeping everybody apart and managing all of that, you know, movement and risk. And it just, I just wonder if we should just level with the community and say, look, it's going to be a very high bar to get back to any kind of in-person school. And this is what the high bar is. And until then, we're risk averse, you know, and we're going to do the best we possibly can to serve every student in this community and meet them where they're at. And I think the community sort of wants that, you know, in a sense that, I mean, we see so much of it going on all around us and nationally, you know, sort of postponing the inevitable. We see, you know, universities sort of trying to, you know, hedge their bets a little bit and bring people in, and then they send everybody back. And we see it in the schools around here. And I don't know. I just don't know why we should, I think, level with our stakeholders and just, but, you know, I'll be interested in the feedback from the environment here.
I'll respond to that a little bit. Thank you, by the way, for that. I really appreciate that. I think as we get to the end of this semester and we've seen what fall and winter are bringing with COVID, and if we have any idea about a vaccine and when distribution would start and things like that, I think we will have a much better picture to say, well, maybe it makes sense to start a hybrid, or maybe it makes no sense at all, because you know, it's going to be a much more of an all clear a few months up the road. And so I appreciate you saying that. And that is exactly the kind of thing that we are trying to monitor right now to figure out. I think one thing that'll be very telling, if the predictions we're hearing about the spread of COVID in the next few months, and we know that Europe is real. And we remember, Europe was a couple, 3 months ahead of us the first round, and we know what's going on in Europe. If all of those indicators are what we think might be, I think what you asked about is exactly the next kind of decision we would have to be making, trying to make.
Yeah.
So basically, it's hard to give a hard and fast prediction now in terms of time and what's going to happen. I think that's my personal stress, is not knowing, but I just don't know that we can know right now.
I'm not necessarily talking about prediction, though. I'm talking about sort of, we know what the various scenarios will be. You know, we can imagine various scenarios, and maybe, you know, would be prudent for us to sort of come out with some plans for what scenarios, you know, do some benchmarking and say we have to reach this point in order to be able to do such and such, or we have to reach this point in order to be able to do such and such. We have to have a vaccine in order to be able to bring everybody back to school. I mean, I mean, yeah, we don't know when that vaccine is going to happen, and we don't know, but maybe we don't approach it that way. We sort of approach it from, these are the things we need to have in place in order to be able to accomplish this. And then also to maybe be straight with people about the fact that, you know, perhaps hybrid, as much as we want the feeling of people to be, I mean, in practice, having kids in school 4 days a month doesn't really solve a lot of the other problems that people are facing on a daily basis, you know? And so is it worthwhile to do that? I don't know. I have a hard time seeing it, but maybe I'm not looking at it properly.
I think you're raising exactly the issue. And I think that's exactly what's going to have to start to develop in the next several weeks. Exactly the kind of thing that you're saying. Totally agree.
I would say that I think, just from my sort of general knowledge of the world and what's going on, as well as what you've said tonight, I think part of the problem with trying to say, okay, this benchmark, or I appreciate that's a way to think about it, but things change in weird ways. So, for example, I work with another school district where they're tracking several metrics, and literally they reported out about a week ago, one of the metrics said go remote, one basically pointed to hybrid, and you know, they don't, like, from week to week things change in such weird ways. It's hard to, you know, with learning goals where we set benchmarks and metrics, we have a little bit more predictability about how they'll work. I think with COVID, everything is just so up for grabs. So I think that what I'm hearing is a commitment to analyzing the situation, continuing to, you know, do the best we can with remote and make that the best, and be open to change if it makes sense to do that. So I also, Stephanie, share your concerns about hybrid. Like I said before, that teachers trying to teach with a mask on with 10 kids in front of them and 20 kids on line or whatever, it's kind of crazy. So I have concerns, but I think what I'm hearing is, let's just be as thorough and you know, paying attention to everything, and then see where it goes. And there may be openings at some point in the future that allow us to do something different. And I guess that nimbleness, I think, is really important. It's not a date certain, and that's really hard. And we're all struggling with that in so many aspects of our lives. We don't know a lot of things, and that is so, you know, just upending for everyone, and for our students especially. But I think, unfortunately, we can't give that, and really the alternative is to just say we're going to keep monitoring, so that, you know, if an opportunity opens to do something different, we will, you know, we're there, we're paying attention to everything, and I think that's what we can do right now, and I think that's a lot actually to do right now.
So I agree with that, Pat. I think that is the best we've got right now.
I just want to echo that. I think what leadership of this district has decided to do is to choose clarity over certainty. And in this time, I feel like that's the responsible thing to do. We don't have all the answers, but we know how we're proceeding. We're proceeding, why we're proceeding in a certain way. It's in the best interest of the safety of not only the students of our district, but the whole community. Although we don't know what's to come, but we're clear about why we're moving in the manner that we're moving. And sometimes I think it's more important to have clarity over certainty.
All right. I'm going to move us along. Thank you for that report. Thank you, board, for your responses and thinking it through. We just got to keep thinking about this. This is the biggest thing we got going on. Impacts every aspect of what we're doing. All right. We are at item number 7. Dr. Davis.
There are 2 FOIAs in your packet. Both of them are from Frolic.
Okay, thank you. All right. Item number 8, board committee reports. Do we have any reports? Okay, thank you. All right. Item number 9, student board report.
Yay!
Yay!
Finally here. Okay. What we've been working on basically in the student union is what I'll start off with, is just kind of getting a feel for how students are feeling, because, you know, we're trying, at least the school is trying to accommodate the best, and we're throwing all these things at students and trying to do a lot of stuff, but we're trying to see how that's working and how that's feeling, because in our first meeting initially, like, so many people were like, I have so much homework. So we're like, okay, this is a small amount of students that we're getting feedback from, so let's send something out. So after, over the past couple of weeks, we've been working on a survey to send out. It also includes demographics. Am I allowed to share my screen here? I can show you, because we just sent it out, I think, a couple days ago. So I can just, maybe I can just tell you how many people have at least responded. We have 408 responses already. So we're hoping to get more, but that is, and we haven't really compiled the data and figured out what we're really going to take from that yet. But that is something that I'll definitely have for the next meeting, just like what all of that means and what that data collection meant after we kind of analyze that. Yeah, I talked a little bit about how I'm feeling, like a little bit stressed, and across the board, I think upperclassmen are feeling a lot more stressed than, you know, the freshmen and the sophomores, but I don't know that for sure, but just knowing that you got more AP classes and, you know, college stuff that seniors are doing over the internet as well, which is really hard. So I just know that there's like added stress as with the older students. In terms of that is pretty much it. I know that I guess on Instagram and social media, that's a big place for communication and voice and a lot of stuff. There's a lot of talk about student resource officers, which I also know is part of the discipline committee as well. But I'm just definitely keeping that on my mind and figuring that out. And I know it's a very complicated situation and that it's not one way or the other. But yes, and there's one last thing. This is a thing that my mom brought up and I didn't even really think about it. But I'm wondering how, I guess, SAT and test taking if there's a possibility to do that within the school. I know that we're not opening up at all, but I know that a lot of kids have to drive like 3 hours to take these tests, and that's already like a big thing that some people just can't get the transportation for that. And I know that a couple other schools in Illinois have done it. I know that every school is not the same, but I just wanted to bring that up and ask that question and see if there's any possibility within that. But I am not an expertise, so I have no idea what goes into that. I just wanted to ask about that. And I don't know if that goes back to what we just closed, so I don't want to open up a conversation that we could have for 3 more hours, but I just wanted to add that in there. And that is it. If anyone has any questions.
Can somebody respond to a question?
Yeah, I'll give a quick response. So we are looking forward. We have not scheduled any of those here at ETHS at the moment, but we haven't closed the door on it. And it's the kind of thing we've been talking about. If we think that there is an opening that we could possibly do that and do it in a safe way, we would certainly be open to it. And that's kind of, yeah, you know, we know that Lane Tech had the SAT a couple weekends ago, and they had a COVID outbreak. So you know, these are the kind of things that we're looking at. But the answer is we have an open mind, because if we can problem solve this in a good way, we want to.
Thank you. All right. Superintendent's report, Dr. Witherspoon, keep talking.
All right. As I rattle through this quickly, I'll remind you, this is a report when we are technically, not doing in person, and yet things such as Coach Mike Ellis and some of the seniors on the basketball team, after painting Black Lives Matter along Dodge and finding out the wear and tear that paint takes when cars are driving over it all the time, find out the way you go about it, literally figured out how do citizens make a proposal to the city council and go through the different requirements of meetings and all of that. And they actually had the Evanston alderman unanimously approved naming this portion of Dodge Avenue right in front of the school as Black Lives Matter Way. And so there will be some kind of a celebration of that, probably virtual, but this was a coach and some young men practicing their citizenship, and that lasts them for 10 years. So for 10 years, this stretch in front of the high school is going to be known as Black Lives Matter Way. So kudos to their leadership. Our National Merit Program has been on a roll. We have 45 of our seniors who've been recognized. 8 of them have been named semifinalists, and 37 of them have been named commended students in the National Merit Scholarship competition. So great representation from ETHS, and so happy for them. Richard Agan, who teaches math at ETHS, recently was honored as one of the top high school math teachers in the nation. Actually, this was only awarded to 20 math teachers nationwide. It's the Edith May Sliffy Award, and in the field of mathematics teaching, this is like the most prestigious award, and one of our very own has received this. The ETHS Community Service Club has an anti-hunger committee. They held their first food drive last month. They collected over 1,100 items and more than $400 that they've given now to organizations in Evanston to fight hunger. So student-led, student-operated, what a tribute to them. We continue to sponsor fan events, and we push a lot of this out in email. We publicize it on our webpage, but I will mention that tomorrow, Tuesday, October 13th, there'll be a program called College During COVID, Lessons from Science, the Science of Adolescence. And that begins at 7 p.m. via Zoom. So that's a fan event. We are, I think I can go fast on this one because Taya did talk about it, but we have our Wildcat Future series going on. And on Wednesday, the 14th of October, we're hosting a virtual family night with Calvin Terrell. So yes, even during this time, family nights still go on. I guess we just can't share the same potluck dinner or whatever, but it'll be a great opportunity for people. Again, Taya mentioned it, but eTown Live is twice a month now on the first and third Friday of the month. And so this Friday, the 16th, there'll be an eTown Live. And yes, Marcus mentioned this, but I want to highlight it's Spirit Week, and we have a full Spirit Week. Things like TikTok Tuesday and Woke Up Like This Pajama Day. But I thought today was a sign of the times, Mask Monday. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Witherspoon. All right. So we've already had our Finance Committee report. So we can move right on to
I'm so
items.
thankful because it's late and I'm tired.
Yes, see? You would be coming on after 10. So
Wow, it was awesome. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, items for action. The first item is approval of cancellation for October 26, 2020 joint board meeting with District 65. And there is an attachment in the packet. Motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Laude,
Yes.
Livingston,
No.
Monsell,
Yes.
Parsons,
Yes.
Rolowitz,
Yes.
Teterich,
No.
Savage Williams,
Yes. Okay, the motion passes. The next item is approval of capital improvement program. Motion for approval, please.
So moved.
The
Second.
motion. Okay. Did you get that, Lisa?
yes.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Livingston,
Yes.
Monsell,
Yes.
Parsons,
Yes.
Rolowitz,
Yes.
Teterich,
Yes.
Laude,
Yes.
Savage Williams,
Yes. Next item is approval of course change proposals.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Monsell,
Yes.
Parsons,
Yes.
Rolowitz,
Yes.
Teterich,
Yes.
Laude,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Savage Williams,
Yes. Next item is adoption of press policy issues number 104 and 105, and the attachments are in the packet.
So moved.
I have a follow-up on that, actually, that
Okay.
Gretchen asked for last time. I was able to contact our attorney about policy 7354 in the packet. It's the privacy policy that pertains to students. And their stance is that they take a more conservative view of student privacy than the actual policy that press had out. And they think we should consider a stricter policy. And I will present that to the policy committee, and then we'll work that through the regular channels. But my ask is that if or when we move to approve this, that we table 7345, that policy for the next time we convene for
Okay.
policy.
I'm happy to make the motion and table that portion of the policy to which Pete just referred, but I can't remember the number of.
7345. Got it. for you.
7345. Thank you.
I second that.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Parsons,
Yes.
Rolowitz,
Yes.
Patirich,
Yes.
Laude,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Mansell,
Yes.
Savage Williams,
Yes. Okay, the next item is the consent agenda, which consists of approval of minutes from September 14th, 2020 special meeting, approval of minutes from September 21 closed session meeting, September 21 regular meeting, September 29th special meeting, and those attachments are in. Treasurer's report from August 2020, approval of bills, personnel agenda, appointments to staff, support, change in status from educational stipends, mentors, leave of absence, maternity, paternity, certified, resignations, support staff, retirement, special education, release of nutrition services.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Rolowitz,
Yes.
Patirich,
Yes.
Laude,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Mansell, Parsons,
Yes.
Savage Williams.
Yes. All right. These are our action items. So we're at old and new business. Does anybody have any old or new business they'd like to present? Gretchen?
I just have one brief new business. I am wondering, I believe it is LGBTQ History Month. And I think last year we had a discussion because it comes on quickly at the beginning of the school year. And we also have Hispanic Latino Heritage Month, which I think was last month we had our resolution.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hopeful that even though we might be late to this, that we could do a resolution on LGBTQ History Month. I feel like we somehow manage to miss it every year. And I'm not sure why. I just think it's something we ought to acknowledge. I'm not sure why we miss it. I'm not saying I'm not sure why we should do it. Just to be clear, it's getting late in the evening. So I'd like to put that on. I'd like to do a resolution. I would like to propose that we adopt it at our next meeting, even though we'll be a tad late.
We'll be late. It's October 1st to October 31st. So, but we'll certainly do a resolution at our next meeting. So definitely.
Then maybe we could just calendar it so we remember it in a more timely way. I mean, part of the problem is with only one meeting a month, we get filled up with resolutions and work and so forth. So
absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So we're at our closing. Can I have a motion for adjournment?
Always happy to make that one.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. This meeting is adjourned, and thank you very much for staying late, staying up. Take